Committee for April. Thank you for attending. If anybody's got any mobile phones or anything that's switched on, can we please switch them off? As we are aware, this is a public meeting and is being live streamed to the public, so there is no fire test planned for today. And we'll quickly move to introductions, which I'm Mohammed Mahroof, Councillor Mohammed Mahroof, Chair of this committee, and we'll go to James and then we'll come back the other way.
Hi there, James Brackley, Independent Cooperative Member.
Councillor Gareth Slater, Southey Ward.
Councillor Matt Dwyer, Burley Ward.
Councillor Fran Belbin, First Park Ward and Deputy Chair of the committee.
Mahroof, Nether Edge and Shadow.
Simon Clement-Jones, Petitions.
Hello, my name's Diane Hurst. I'm an elected member for Richmond Ward.
If we can go around the offices as well, please.
Philippa Burdett, Democratic Services.
David Hollis, General Counsel.
Philip Gregory, Director of Finance and Commercial Services.
Thank you so much for that. Item 2 is apologies for any absence. I haven't got any unless you have, Philippa. No, that's fine. Item 3, exclusion of the public and press. We do have one report today, which is item number 10, at which stage the webcast will be stopped and any members of the public and press who are not here would have been excluded, but they're not now. In terms of item number 4, any declarations of interest? Can't see any. Thank you so much. And item number 5, which is minutes of previous meeting. I'm assuming people have read them. And if there are any issues, can you please speak up? Otherwise, we will accept them. Sorry, Fran.
I think they're all right. There was just one question that we had on there that I think, David, you said you'd follow up about the equalities training, and I just wondered if we had an answer on that one.
No, sorry, Councillor Belbin, not. I'll pick that up and I'll make sure there's an update sent round.
Any further observations, anything? So we'll take that as minutes are accepted. Item number 6, public questions and petitions. I'm not aware of anything like that. No, thank you. So it's straight over to Linda, and I think it's pretty much a Linda show today, isn't it? So this one is the internal audit tactical plan. So Linda, and I'm assuming people have read the report, but it might be worth just refreshing it slightly as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'll just highlight some key points in the report. So the report outlines our planning methodology and programme of work for the year 25-26. The plan needs to be flexible and reactive because we need to respond to changing issues and changing risks. But this just gives you a broad overview of the key areas at the moment, and this is the audit plan that we're going to work to from the 1st of April. It's been developed to make sure that it's got enough coverage for me to give you my head of audit opinion in October. So as long as we deliver, you know, the bulk of those audits within there, I should be able to give an opinion. I just wanted to mention as well, Appendix 2, I've given you a couple of slides there about the Global International Auditing Standards. I know I've mentioned it a couple of times before, but it's in effect now, came into effect in April. So I've highlighted there what the 5 domains are, what the 15 guiding principles are, and then it also explains sort of the role of the Audit and Standards Committee as well. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an overview on those standards. The planning methodology, I'll just give you an overview on that. We use quite a variety of methods to come up with the areas that are on the plan. We look at what's in the risk registers, so that's not just the corporate ones, it's the service and directorate ones. We look at the AGS themes. We look at other core cities and South West Yorkshire Group. We have a benchmarking exercise with them to see if there's any areas that they've got in their audit plan that we haven't got in ours. It could be that it's a deliberate that we haven't got that area, or it's not classed as a high risk for us, but it just gives us an overview as well and a comparison. We also use a scoring methodology. So I think I've mentioned this before, but basically we look at the budget size, if there's any overspend, has it been audited before, is it new staff in that area, and look at the transactions that have gone through. We also in there, there's 18 grants that I need to sign off this year, so they're recorded in there. And then also any projects or programmes that we're aware of that we need our audit view on. So the structure is similar to last year. So we've got a tab there for each directorate. We've got main financial systems recorded in there. There's corporate audits, there's investigations allocation, and then there's also some work in there for follow-ups. So there's a variety of audits and coverage within those areas. Also at the end, you'll notice we've got a first call tab. So what we call the first call tab, these are audits that haven't hit the plan, so they're not included in the total days, but we might call upon them if, when we start to scope an audit, it's not viable or it's not the right timing, then we need to replace it with another audit. So that's what we call the first call. And also at mid-year, it might be that one of the first calls is more of a priority, so it might be to swap it around. So that's what we call the first call. There's a business partner allocation in there. This is what we call as like advice and guidance and a bit of consultancy work on new projects and programmes. And for those reviews, we'll do a briefing note at the end of it, so we still assess that area and do a briefing note. So on page 8, I'll just start there. Page 8 is the summary of all the audits across the directorates, and the total days is 1,635, and that reflects the audit resource that we've got, and currently there's a team of 13. And then Appendix 1 is the full audit plan, so that gives you the individual audits that build up onto that 1,635 days. Page 9, that just totals there. So the total outputs we're looking for 25-26 is 110 audits. So that's the total outputs for the year. And then on paragraph 39, just want to point this out to you, on mid-year, I will do a review of the audits we've undertaken and look at the resources we've got for the last 6 months of the year. If it changes within 15%, so 15% of the 110 is 94. If I get lower than that number and I can't deliver lower than 94, that's when I'll come back and ask for endorsement from this committee that we need to change it. It could be a number of reasons. It could be due to productivity. It could be due to staff sickness or anything like that. So I'll be able to give you a reason then. So what I'm recommending is the endorsement of the programme for 25-26. Any questions?
Councillor Belbin and then Councillor Dwyer.
Thank you. I had a few different questions, so I'll ask them one by one if it's all right, and let you respond to them. So one of the things I wondered in general is looking down the list. Some things are clear things that we are working on at the moment, and so you can see things like priority budgeting and homeschool transport. So I can see, obviously, that's really sensible to be looking at those while we're looking at making changes. Others perhaps look as if they're a bit more reactive to things that have potentially not gone as well in the past. So, for instance, gas servicing in housing and things like that. So I just wondered if you could comment, I suppose, on the robustness of the methodology, in that we seem to, in some cases, we seem to be looking back a little bit, and in some cases, we seem to be looking forwards. So I just wonder if you could comment on that to begin with.
Yeah, you're right. So when we start to score these, like I say, we look at, has there been issues in the past? So like I say, it could be a reactive one where we've had issues previously, so we've included it again, or it could be that we've not audited it for 4 or 5 years, so it could be comment on that. Like I say, it could be something where we've got lessons learned. So we've had a similar project or a programme, and we think, well, actually, we need a bit of an oversight and do it early on rather than towards the end of a project or a programme. So like I said, there will be some reactive things in there, but there's also some things we want to get, in there up front and help, look at the controls early on rather than when it's too late. Yeah.
So I had a question specifically around the leisure contract one as well. So that's something, obviously, we've put the contract in place from the beginning of this year. So again, is that something we should have been looking at last year, if you like, before we put the contract in place, rather than waiting until the contract was already in place?
Yeah, that one it could have been. We had that on, like I say, we had it on our first call, so we had it on last year, but the priorities moved, so we ended up having to put that one onto this year. So yeah, but that one will be one of the ones that we look at within the first quarter. Yeah.
And then just a question about the first call ones. I noted that the one about school attendance in particular, that's been, it talks about that's been an issue since at least COVID times. So it just feels as if it's something that potentially, you know, is a really significant issue for us in the city. I know it's a countrywide issue and not specific to Sheffield, but is that something that potentially could keep getting bumped off the list, if you like? But at some point, it feels that's something we really do need to look at. So,
Yeah, what we'll do is
comment on that.
that one. I'll make sure that, you know, so like I said, when we try and scope an audit, if there's some that are already in there within the children's services, I'll make sure that's one of the ones that we put on first. Then, like I say, it is a key area for us to. But it just didn't. That one, the scoring, it was just below the cut-off. So yeah.
Councillor Dwyer.
Yeah, thank you. Mine was, because you've answered a lot of my questions about, like, what is first call. It was on, there was a couple of the audits you're looking at, I just wanted a bit more information on. On page 19, it's talking about auditing 5 schools, and it was, I just didn't know whether these were just our LA maintained ones, or the multi-academy trusts as well. So is this a picture of the whole, all schools, or just the ones we run?
It's just ours, so it's just our maintained schools. And what we do for those 5, and what we did, we look at themes, so we discussed with the children's services as to sort of the theme or area we want to look at. And last year we looked at the 5 we picked were particularly the deficit schools, so we concentrated on those again this year. So that's why we haven't put them down, because we haven't selected them yet. But what we do, they do a financial value statement every year. And again, depends what's on their returns. Sometimes we will select a school following on what's on there if it highlights some areas of concern, because we're expecting them to put on the return, yes, they're achieving and they're meeting all the standards. If there's a lot of no's, then that again is sort of a red flag for us. So yeah, we use that information as well.
Thank you. And then on multi-academy trusts, there's obviously arm's length from the council, but council money goes to them, but it's not just block grants from the DFE, the council give money to. So what assurances and audit do we do on MATs to make sure those are using that money appropriately, but then also achieving the best outcomes for children in the city? And is that something we have control over and governance over?
We don't audit like I said, they do have independent auditors that they have to commission and report on. So they have that method, but we don't have the remit to go into the academy schools, no.
And does that audit go to the DFE then, not to us? Okay.
Yeah.
And then the other one was on page 42, the AI. And it was just talking about AI governance. And I was sort of wondering what our current position is in the council, if it does have a policy and governance framework, and where that sits in terms, is it a single committee, or is it, thinking of my own policy committee, is it done by policy committee, so in adults sits with adults and children, social cares? I was just wondering, what is our current governance arrangement?
Yeah, so what I was going to look at on that one, because what we've got at the moment, we've got some licences for the co-pilot. So what we was going to do was look at, and obviously that's the pilot's near completion. So we're looking at, what we want to do is look at then the policy and the rollout, if we do roll it out further. So again, that one will have to be timed, because we won't do industry until the pilot's been finished and any feedback from that. So that's what we're looking at. So it will be the governance, the rollout, policies. But if there isn't, if we don't go with co-pilot or a licence, then it's like, well, what are we going to tell staff that are using, you know, ChatGPT or whatever? So it's the policies around that as well. So yeah, there will be some AI audit, but the remit at the minute will depend on the outcomes of the pilot.
Thank you. Yeah, just a few points. On page 23 on budget savings, it's really good to see that in the plan. There's been, I think, a point raised by the previous external audits the last couple of years that we've kind of slipped against the budget in year. So a couple of questions on this. It says that it's looking at budget savings, effectiveness and monitoring. Will that also look at budget setting, is my first question. And my second question is, when it says outcomes, does that mean delivery of savings, or does that mean actually looking at the consequences of savings in terms of quality of service? If you could say a bit more about all of that, and obviously you're looking at the kind of the controls in relation to all of this. You're not doing a value for money audit here necessarily.
No. So like I say, we're looking at the you're right, we're looking at the controls, so we will include the settings. And like you say, we need to scope it. So what we'll do when we start scoping this one is making sure that we cover all those elements you've just suggested, because like I said, there's still the key risks. But we do try and, we try to sort of limit it to 5 or 6 risks. So like you say, what you've just said there will be all the risks that we'll be covering, but yeah, it's, and we put there is in adult care and wellbeing. But like I say, once we've done that, it might be mid-year that we we broaden that scope? So do we look at other areas? So we're going to start in adults first, but it could be that we, do it elsewhere.
Yeah, just a couple of questions. So, yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think if that could look at, as outcomes, that would be really good. Next point was on equal pay on page, a bit further on, 38. So there's potentially an awful lot of controls in relation to equal pay that you might potentially need to look at. And this is potentially a complex area. I understand it's not an area we've had an internal audit look at for quite some time. I think 2011. Is 10 hours sufficient there? And could you say a bit more about the scope of that piece of work on equal pay?
Yeah, so what we put in there, there's two there. There's the equal pay and then the SRRP, the Sheffield Role Review. We've just put, we put it down as business partnering, and we put it down just 10 days for each of those. So basically, when we need to, once the project's moved further along, then that is when we need to start assessing as to what elements we'll look at and what input we'll have. So like I said, we've only put a token 10 days. At mid-year, it might be that we spent those 10 days and we need to put some more time in. So like I say, that don't get sort of bogged down by that 10 days there. It's flexible. We needed to put some days in to balance and to know how we match the resources. But if more days are needed, we'll put more days in. But like I said, we haven't actually scoped anything in either of those two areas yet. So we need to see where the projects, the timelines and what's going to be delivered and what's not going to be delivered. So, yeah.
Cheers, that's really helpful. That's probably something for audit committee to keep an eye on and report back on. And then just lastly, an observation that it's good to see that you're picking up on all the the IT systems on pages 41 and 42, and then the main financial systems on page 43, which I think is something we've commented on, or you've commented on and presented to this committee previously. So that's, it's good to see that that's sort of still being, prioritised going forward, as I think we would.
Yeah, and the main financial systems work, the external auditors place reliance on the work that we do as well on those areas. So, yeah.
Thank you, James. Councillor Hurst.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for this, Linda. It gives me great reassurance when I see this, because I know that there's an overview there and we have a plan to look at things before they trip us up. So thank you. Also, good report as usual, clearly laid out and easy to understand. My question is a little bit more abstract. We've had a lot of churn recently in very senior staff, and there's more happening. And some of those are in very key areas. If you see that there's something through the reporting mechanisms that's giving you cause for concern, how would you address that? Would that be something that you would pick up under reactive, or would you keep a watching brief and perhaps write something into the plan next year?
No, so if we're doing an audit in one area and we pick up something that's quite significant and we've got concerns with it, then we will pick it up. If it's not within the scope of that audit, we'll put it down as a separate audit and still undertake that. And that is where it's got to be. The plan's got to be reactive and flexible. So it might be that we take that and replace it with some, from something else. But yeah, if we do see something that's high risk or that, is inappropriate, we don't leave it 6 months or to the next year's plan. We'll put it on and audit it now. So yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, any further questions? Councillor.
A couple of little ones that I forgot. On page 29, I just didn't understand what National Fraud Initiative consolation and reporting means.
All right, so it's the Cabinet Office. So all authorities do the National Fraud Initiative, and it's a collation of data. So what we do, we're the collation point, and the reporting. So we don't do the work ourselves, but we collate it and do the reports and the chasing. So that's what it means, the consolidation of that. Yeah.
And the other one was just on the new standards. So I just wondered if you could mention if there's anything key changes that we need to be aware of there, really, particularly in relation to the expectations of this committee.
Yeah. One of the key, I mean, to be fair, I've done a gap analysis, and there's a couple of areas that I just need to look through. So one of them is like looking at a skills gap analysis between the auditors and the role profile. So I need to sort of look at that. So there's some new things that are in there. And one of the new things as well is, it mentions there about the charter. We've got a charter, and I bring that with you every year in my annual report, but we don't have a strategy, an audit strategy. So that's a new document that I'll need to produce, and that will be produced for the October when I bring my annual report. So it's just a few, there isn't a big difference, but there's just a few more documents and a few more things that I just need to introduce. But I can't see that, by the time I come to do my annual report, I should have a lot of that in place. So yeah, we should be compliant. Yeah.
Thank you. If there's no further questions, I've got two in particular. And firstly, I'd like to say it's an excellent report, because a lot of the things that have been encompassed in this have been developing over quite a number of years, I believe. And now we're seeing that these things are actually, you've got a good overview on it. So I share Councillor Hurd's opinion on that. The one that I'm just want some comments on, and I'm glad it's actually on here, because it's something that I've been raising on a number of occasions, is around property services. And page 15, following the relocation of the service, the review seeks to provide management with assurance that operational controls are robust. And there's another couple of points there as well. I'm assuming that is around having controls in place for doing valuation, because these are the things that actually contribute to our accounts as well. So if they're actually wrong at source, then it becomes a big issue for us, because we're signing off accounts that haven't actually been robustly checked by a number of people. So is that my assumption correct?
Yeah, it is. And like you say, it's been on the radar, but it hasn't actually got up to the high priority. So like I say, it is one that's been brought forward this year, and yeah, it has made the plan. So like I say, property services is a key one to look at. And I think, to be fair, they said as well, we wanted to do that one in quarter 1 or quarter 2. So yeah, it'll be one of the ones that we do on.
The reason for raising it is obviously it makes a fundamental difference to our accounts, because we're talking millions here, aren't we?
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that they're going to be following the RICS guidelines on how local authority values operate as well.
Yeah.
So that's fine. Thank you for that, and I'm glad it's on there. The second one is more of a story, really, and I know it's been on audit for quite some time now. It's around council tax, and you're saying you're looking at the processes, and we're looking at the processes that they've got in place are fine. But one of the sort of key issues for a lot of members is we do get contacted by constituents on a regular basis that they can't even get through to anybody to have an issue with them. And they can be on the telephone for about 45 minutes, an hour. I might be an outlier here by saying this, but and then the telephone line gets dropped and people just give up. But the issue that I've raised on a number of occasions here before, they said they were going to get a CRM system in place to make sure that it doesn't happen. But it continues to happen, and I've had people who've come to me with stories saying that this happens, and especially when you've been served with a statutory notice and you're really keen to get to somebody, because some people get really, really concerned about it. And the next best thing is to contact your counsellor and say, look, I can't get through. Can you try to get through? And unfortunately, we can only do it by email. So I'm assuming that there is some overview on this. It probably applies to other areas of council contacts as well, but it's been quite some time since we've had a report on that in audit.
Yeah, we're doing an audit on customer complaints. Well, complaints and compliments. So we're doing an audit on that. And like I say, one of the key complaints is about the length of time it takes to answer the phone calls. So yeah, but we haven't finalised that report yet. But we're doing a current audit on the complaints, and it is a lot of the time on answering calls to council tax queries. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Philip.
Just to add to that, I also get a number of emails, as you might imagine, from people who either can't get through to business rates or council tax or particular issues that they want to raise. So I share some of your frustration with that. I think it's worth pointing out there's a huge amount of effort going into our customer experience across the council. And the work to do that is unpicking and rebuilding that capacity and capability within the organisation. So the ultimate aim is that people will not be waiting on the phone for a period of time, and that their call will be directed to the right person who can support them. And there'll be a number of ways that we can support doing that, but that's an absolute focus for getting that piece of work as quickly as possible. So within the Future Sheffield programme, that's one of the first work streams that's been taken forward because it's so important to get right. So we should start to see the changes from that later this year.
Thank you for that, Philip, because otherwise you're going to get more and more emails because they want to speak to the boss generally once they get bored of everybody else that they can't get through to. So thank you for raising that. The final point, Linda, is just an observation. Housing tenancy, page 5, housing tenancy and right to buy frauds. They're not. Is there any reason they're not part of the internal audit? I mean, I might have missed it. There's probably an obvious reason that they're investigated directly by the housing fraud team.
Yeah, it's never been part of the internal audit team. It's always been dealt with separately by them. It's only a small team, but yeah, they don't come under me, or it's not under my remit at all to do that. And I don't think there's any intention of bringing it in either, so it's, yeah.
I'm assuming they report to Housing Committee, not Audit and Standards. Sorry, just for clarifications. Unless there's any further questions, we'll move towards the recommendation. And unfortunately, as normal, we have to read this. The recommendation is the Audit and Standards Committee is recommended to, in respect of the provision of the statutory internal audit function and in order to comply with the best professional practice, including Global Internal Audit Standards, GIAS, it is recommended that members endorse the attached programme of work for 25-26. Are we all agreed on that? All agreed, Linda? Right, you might as well move on to the next one, item 8, that's yours as well, which is compliance to international auditing standards.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this report has been drafted to demonstrate this committee's assurance and oversight on the reports and papers that have been presented during the last year. So that goes up to the 1st of April 25. So it demonstrates you've looked at areas of risk, financial control, reporting and governance, and internal control. The report, there's nothing new in the report. All the report is, it's basically a log of everything that's been presented in the last 12 months. And it covers, on paragraph 10, it outlines there that the 6 key areas that the various reports that come to you slot under. So that's the annual accounts, system of internal control, governance arrangements, counterfraud arrangements, risk management and standards issues. And within each of these elements, so from paragraphs 15 to 34, that does actually then highlight under each one exactly the reports that have come under and come to this committee. And you can see there's quite a broad range in there as well. And there isn't any area where you haven't had any oversight in those 6 key themes. So it shows you've had quite a broad amount of presentations and the reports that have gone to you. And then paragraph 16, that highlights the training that's been delivered in the last year as well, again to help you scrutinise and look through those areas. So I wasn't intending going through the individual reports. The main thing for this report is to ask if there's any areas that are remitting from there. So is there anything that you think has been presented that's not there? But I will just say I did go through all the minutes in the last year and put everything through. So there shouldn't actually be anything that I've missed and produced on there. So all it is, it's the recommendation for this one is just to make sure that you agree it's an accurate reflection of what's gone through in the last 12 months. And then it does give you the oversight and fulfills your requirement for those charged with governance. So that was the reason for this report. Like I say, it's one that you get every year as well that just summarises the last 12 months.
Thank you for that, Linda. Yeah, it is one standard one. This one isn't it really? So is there any questions on this? James.
Sorry, it's a bit of a technicality, but on page 4, obviously we're summarising the various assurances that this committee has had, and we see the statements of accounts 22-23 and 23-24, and it says audited. It was a disclaimed audit opinion. I don't know, just trying to think if it's technically correct to say that they were audited. I suppose they were, but I don't know if it's worth, maybe perhaps just for the minutes to note that that was a disclaimed audit.
Yeah, that's a fair point. So yeah, should we put that in the minutes at least then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Please, yeah. Thank you. Any further questions? No. Just move towards the recommendation. The Audit and Standards Committee is recommended to confirm that the report gives an accurate reflection of the reports they have received and considered throughout the year, and to confirm that they now have an overview of the Council's systems of internal control, so that they are assured that they are fulfilling the requirements of those charged with governance under the international auditing standards. So we all agreed on that. Thank you so much, Linda. The next one isn't you, is it? The work programme.
Thank you, Chair. The rest of the work programme, or the remaining for 2024-25, is on page 15 of the main pack. That just highlights a couple of changes moving forward into the next municipal year. There's also an addition that I've sent round, a further part to item 9, which highlights the work programme for 25-26. So that's been prepared in conjunction with officers in sort of parallel with what's happened this year. So that's for you to have a look at, just to look at the year ahead and note any comments. Thank you.
Any comments? I think nobody's thinking that far ahead at the moment, so you're fine with that today. So it only remains for me to say the Audit and Standards Committee is recommended to approve the work programme. So everybody agreed on that? Fine. Thank you so much. Before we move on to item 10, we might as well finish off on 11, because we'll not come back into the webcast again, will we? So we're not webcasting. So item 11 is date of future meetings. The dates and times of the Audit and Standards Committee for municipal year 25-26 will be confirmed at the Council's AGM on the 19th of May 2025. So thank you for everybody who's been part of this Audit and Standards Committee. Hopefully we might see each other on the other side as well, but if not, thank you for all your help that you've given me over the year. It's been much appreciated. Thank you. We are now moving into